Welcome to our journey through time as we explore the fascinating history of New York City, a city that grew from a small settlement into one of the most iconic metropolises on Earth. For the next hour, we will travel through centuries of ambition, struggle, and transformation, uncovering the events and people that shaped this remarkable city. Our story begins in the early 1600s, when this land was home to the Lenape people, a Native American tribe that lived along the rivers and forests of what is now New York. They fished in the Hudson River, hunted in the woodlands, and built villages on the fertile ground. Their world would soon change forever. In 1609, the Italian explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano sailed into New York Harbor under the French flag, marking the first recorded European entry into these waters. A few years later, in 1609 as well, the English explorer Henry Hudson, sailing for the Dutch East India Company, navigated up the river that now bears his name, opening the region to European trade and exploration. By 1624, Dutch settlers established a trading post called New Amsterdam on the southern tip of Manhattan Island. 2 years later, in 1626, Peter Minuit famously purchased Manhattan from the Native Americans for trade goods worth about 60 guilders, roughly equivalent to $1,000 today. This story, half fact and half legend, has become part of New York's founding myth. The Dutch colony thrived as a center of commerce, with beaver pelts and other goods shipped across the Atlantic. In 1653, New Amsterdam was officially incorporated as a city, protected by a wall built along what is now Wall Street. But the city's Dutch chapter ended in 1664, when English warships arrived and seized control without firing a shot. King Charles II of England granted the land to his brother, the Duke of York, and New Amsterdam was renamed New York in his honor. Under English rule, New York grew as a diverse and bustling port. Merchants from Europe, Africa, and the Caribbean traded goods ranging from sugar and rum to enslaved Africans, a dark chapter in the city's history. By the mid-1700s, New York had become the second largest city in the American colonies after Philadelphia, known for its commerce, printing presses, and vibrant cultural life. Tensions with Britain escalated in the 1760s. In 1765, the Stamp Act Congress met in New York, uniting the colonies in protest against British taxes. Pamphlets, newspapers, and political debates filled the city as revolutionary ideas spread. When the American Revolution began in 1775, New York quickly became a key battleground. In July 1776, the Declaration of Independence was read aloud in New York for the first time, and soon after, General George Washington's troops prepared to defend the city. But in August, British forces captured New York after the Battle of Long Island, and the city remained under British control for most of the war. It wasn't until November 25, 1783, Evacuation Day, that the last British troops left, and Washington triumphantly entered the city. Just 2 years later, in 1785, New York became the capital of the newly formed United States. In 1789, on the balcony of Federal Hall on Wall Street, George Washington was inaugurated as the first president of the United States. Though the capital moved to Philadelphia a year later and eventually to Washington, D.C., New York's status as a center of finance and culture only grew stronger. The early 19th century brought rapid change. In 1792, brokers gathered under a buttonwood tree on Wall Street, signing an agreement that laid the foundation for the New York Stock Exchange. In 1807, Robert Fulton's steamboat, the Claremont, traveled up the Hudson River, revolutionizing transportation and commerce. The city's population exploded as immigrants arrived from Ireland, Germany, and beyond. In 1811, city planners designed the famous Manhattan Street Grid, a visionary plan that extended streets and avenues across the island, shaping the modern cityscape. One of the greatest engineering feats of the era was the Erie Canal, completed in 1825. Stretching from the Hudson River to the Great Lakes, it turned New York into America's gateway for trade and immigration, linking the Atlantic Ocean to the nation's heartland. Within a few decades, New York had become the busiest port in the United States. But rapid growth brought challenges. Fires, diseases like cholera and yellow fever, and overcrowded housing plagued the city. In 1835, a massive fire destroyed much of Lower Manhattan, prompting the creation of a modern firefighting system and the construction of new buildings in stone rather than wood. As the century progressed, waves of immigrants continued to arrive, especially from Ireland during the Great Famine of the 1840s. These newcomers settled in neighborhoods like 5 Points, known for its poverty but also for its rich cultural mix. Tensions between ethnic groups, economic classes, and political factions often erupted into violence, such as the Astor Place riot of 1849 and the draft riots of 1863 during the Civil War. Yet the city also saw remarkable achievements. In 1858, construction began on Central Park, designed by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux as a green oasis for all New Yorkers. The park became a model for urban planning worldwide. The Civil War era transformed the economy, with New York's factories and shipyards supplying the Union Army. After the war, the city entered the Gilded Age, a period of enormous wealth for some and grinding poverty for others. Millionaires like Cornelius Vanderbilt and John D. Rockefeller built mansions along Fifth Avenue, while immigrant families crowded into tenements on the Lower East Side. In 1883, the Brooklyn Bridge opened, linking Manhattan and Brooklyn with what was then the longest suspension bridge in the world. 10 years later, in 1892, Ellis Island opened as the nation's busiest immigration station. Millions of newcomers from Italy, Eastern Europe, and other regions passed through its gates, seeking a new life in America. The Statue of Liberty, dedicated in 1886, stood in New York Harbor as a beacon of hope, welcoming immigrants with its promise of freedom and opportunity. At the same time, labor movements grew as workers demanded better wages and conditions, leading to strikes and reforms. In 1898, a historic consolidation joined Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island into the 5 boroughs of modern New York City. The population now exceeded 3 million, making it the largest city in the United States. The early 20th century brought skyscrapers like the Flatiron Building in 1902 and the Empire State Building in 1931, redefining the skyline. The New York City subway opened in 1904, revolutionizing urban transportation. Cultural movements flourished, from the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s to the birth of modern art at the Museum of Modern Art and the Metropolitan Museum. The Great Depression hit New York hard in the 1930s, but public works projects like the Triborough Bridge and Rockefeller Center provided jobs and reshaped the city. During World War II, New York became a hub of industry, finance, and culture, solidifying its role as a global metropolis. After the war, immigrants from Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and across the world added new layers of diversity. The United Nations headquarters opened in 1952, declaring New York the capital of international diplomacy. By the mid-20th century, New York had become a symbol of modern urban life, a city of skyscrapers and subways, theaters and stock exchanges, neighborhoods filled with every language on earth. It was a place of dreams and drama, of triumphs and struggles, forever reinventing itself. Today, New York City stands as a testament to centuries of growth, resilience, and diversity. From a tiny Dutch settlement to a global capital of culture, finance, and innovation, its history is the story of America itself, a story still being written every day on the streets of the city that never sleeps.